Philadelphia 76ers had a brutal flameout in the playoffs this year. A flameout that highlighted and emphasized the weaknesses of Ben Simmons to both the national media and, even worse, NBA Twitter. Since the final buzzer sounded in the Hawks-Sixers series, speculation about Ben Simmons being moved out of Philadelphia has been running rampant. It seems almost like a foregone conclusion that Ben Simmons has played his last game for the city of brotherly love. There has been a monstrous amount of speculation about potential trade packages for the all-NBA point forward. Near amongst the top of the heap has been a potential move to the Minnesota Timberwolves. In this video, we'll discuss different iterations of this potential trade, how Simmons would fit in Minnesota, and what the Wolves should do. Right off the bat, as we look at the different potential trades, let's make this perfectly clear. Ant is off the table. I'm not sure if that needs to be stated or not, but there are exactly 0 scenarios in which he should be moved. There's also been plenty of speculation about cat trades, and for years there's been speculation about cat trades. And well, clearly that doesn't factor into a Philly deal at all. Barring Cat pulling an AD and just pouting his way out, there are 0 circumstances in which he should be moved either. So for all-around trade deals, and specifically this one, Ant and Cat are off the board. So the first package we look at is practically more of an exercise in what these players bring, because it is centered around Rubio and Beasley. Now this package is simply not enticing enough for the Sixers to part way with Simmons. Given that around the league there are players like Malcolm Brogdon and CJ McCollum on the board, it's hard to imagine the Sixers would sell as low as a Beasley-centered return. But for what it's worth, Beasley does address the issues that the 76ers face. He is a floor spacing bucket getter, and it is hard for a non-spacing big man like Embiid to close out a game. And that's no disrespect to Embiid. He's a dominant player. But in the last couple minutes in a clutch possession, someone who can produce their own shot is paramount. Beasley has more than displayed an ability to do so this last season. Putting up almost 20 a game on efficient shooting splits, Beasley would be a solid get for the Sixers. In this case, you got to toss in Rubio partially to make the finances work, but also to help facilitate the offense and feed Embiid with efficiency. As much as it pains me to say to acquire an asset like Simo, I'd even be willing to part with Mac Daddy himself. Jaden McDaniels is coming off of a low-key, fantastic rookie season. He showed consistent ability to space the floor and defend at a very high caliber. He would be a good fit with Embiid, as he can space out the floor for him, and he would maintain the 76ers' high-quality defense. All that said, this package is simply not enough for Ben Simmons. Even if you added in additional picks, the Sixers are trying to win now, and they're not looking for future assets in returns. They're looking for a star. So let's talk about a star. Highly controversial amongst the Timberwolves faithful is a potential D'Angelo Russell, Ben Simmons trades. Some Wolves fans look at the stretch that we ended our season with as a potential preview of next season. Karl Anthony Towns, D'Angelo Russell, and Anthony Edwards forming some chemistry and displaying a potent offensive unit. And do not get me wrong, I like the look of that team. If no Simmons trade occurs and we run out a Cat, D'Lo, and Ant big three next year, complemented by the likes of Beasley and Mac Daddy and the sexy Spaniard, I'm not going to be upset. However, we need to be realistic. Even down the stretch of this last season, with our pieces in place, we went 9-7. And that's nice. As a Wolves fan, anything over 50%, that's really nice. But could we do better? Certainly. So now the big question, before we even look at the specifics of a Simmons D'Lo deal, would Ben Simmons make us better? Well, it's no secret that here in the North we are struggling with defense. Even with defensive specialists like Okogie and maybe Mac Daddy, We can't stop a thing. The Wolves can't guard a traffic cone right now. A starting lineup of D'Lo, Bees, Ant, Mac Daddy, and Cat is far from defensively adequate. Cat has shown flashes of high caliber defending, but has never been able to establish consistency as a defensive anchor. D'Lo and Bees are at best average defenders, and that is certainly stretching it. Ant and Mac Daddy both have high defensive upside, but they're only second-year players. In the Western Conference, we are faced with a high number of perimeter-oriented superstars. Chris Paul, Steph Curry, Dame Lillard, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and if we face those guys next season with no moves made, who are we going to put on those guys? Ant? He's just not there yet. Mac Daddy maybe on some of those forwards, but he isn't exactly ready to be a LeBron stopper. Realistically, we probably run Okogie out with the starting lineup, and while that's a decent answer defensively, we can certainly do better. We can do better with Ben Simmons. Simmons would directly address our issues defensively. Suddenly, we'd be running out an all-defensive defender. Not an all-defensive level defender, a straight-up all-defensive, two-time defender. Simmons is arguably the best perimeter defender in basketball, and adding him in place of D'Angelo at least takes our defense from subpar to above average. So, what would be the damage offensively? That's the big concern with Simmons. D'Angelo Russell is a walking bucket and a very good facilitator. D'Lo can score from anywhere, and he is one of the league's better isolation players. Simmons is a very good facilitator as well, but his offensive ability otherwise is embarrassing. Simmons doesn't possess a jump shot, and it's not just that he's bad at jumpers. He straight up doesn't do it. Simmons is embarrassingly unwilling to score. He's lightning quick, and he's got good handles, so he's dangerous in transition. But he is a non-factor in the half-court offense. Where D'Lo does his most damage, Simmons is practically non-existent. Simmons can completely disappear on offense at times, and his inability to threaten the defense has been damaging Embiid's efficiency and effectiveness for years. But what about us? Is the defensive improvement great enough to justify a potential offensive drop-off? Well, what would our offense look like with Simmons? Our starting lineup would probably be something like Simmons, Beasley, Anthony Edwards, Mac Daddy, and Cat. And what's beautiful about that lineup is that Simmons is being asked to be at most our third scorer, probably our fourth. I actually think it's a tremendous lineup, and while it's certainly less potent than having D'Angelo Russell out there, this is more than a serviceable offense. From a spacing standpoint, Simmons' inability to shoot doesn't make a huge difference, as everyone else in that lineup is a shooter. At worst, the lane would become clogged up a bit for Ant and for Cat, but both of those guys can step out and shoot from distance. The need for Simmons to produce in the half court really isn't there. He would just need to facilitate or line up in the dunker spot, while Cat and Ant take the reins as the primary scorers, and Beasley a more than capable third option. If you get into the clutch and you're worried about a potential hack-a-bend scenario, then bring Rubio out. He can maintain running the offense and step to the line in a foul situation, all while being a serviceable defender. I think Simmons actually fits really well in Minnesota. Conversely, D'Lo fits great in Philly. He is the half-court, bucket-getting, game-closing ball handler they need. D'Lo's less than stellar defensive talents are covered by the defensive skill sets of Embiid and Matisse Thybulle. I genuinely think this trade would be an improvement for both teams. So, exactly what would this trade look like? Well, D'Lo for Simmons does work 1-for-1. I'm not sure the 76ers would be willing to take this as a 1-for-1 deal. I believe they would ask for either additional picks or additional players. Now, the Wolves should not over-pursue and sell the house for Simmons, but I think parting way with at most one first-round pick isn't unreasonable. Additionally, I think tagging on Okogie would sweeten the deal a little bit, as it would help the 76ers minimalize the defensive loss in parting ways with Simmons. Perhaps, once again, it pains me to say, Mac Daddy could be tossed in instead of Okogie, and while it would hurt my heart, I think it would be a fair trade. So in summary, I think the most realistic trade package for both teams would be D'Angelo Russell, Josh Okogie, and a pick swap for Ben Simmons and a pick swap, where 76ers get the better pick. I honestly think this trade would benefit both teams. It addresses Minnesota's defensive weaknesses while not damaging their offense too extremely, and it addresses Philadelphia's offensive struggles while not burning down their defense. Quickly, I will mention, in my opinion, the consent of Karl-Anthony Towns is important here. It's well documented that him and D'Angelo are tight, and if moving D'Angelo would be a backbreaker for Karl, or something that would just disenfranchise him from Minnesota, I think that puts the kibosh to this move. However, the addition of Simmons would make the Wolves a playoff caliber team, and maybe that's the most important piece to keeping Karl around. As I stated earlier in the video, if the Wolves pass on this trade or can't come to amicable terms with Philly, I'd be just fine with that. D'Angelo, Anthony, and Karl, that's a nice core, and I'm not going to complain about that setup. However, Simmons, Ant, and Cat is a core with a much higher ceiling, and I would certainly consider it an upgrade. What do you think? Stay lit, and thanks for watching.